Coming attractions. Up next, we'll take a look at 10 of the dumbest statements ever made. You don't want to miss them, so listen on. Paradigms and principles. What you see is what you get. The following is a list of statements made many years ago by experts in their fields. At the time they were said, they sounded intelligent. With the passing of time, they sound idiotic. I call them top 10 all-time stupid quotes. Number 10, said by Kenneth Olson, who was the president and founder of Digital Equipment Corporation in 1977. Here's what he said. There is no reason for any individual to have a computer in their home. Number 9, said by Marshal Ferdinand Foch, French military strategist and future World War I commander in 1911. Quote, airplanes are interesting toys, but of no military value. Number 8, Dr. Lee DeForest, inventor of the audion tube and father of radio, said on February 25th, 1967, man will never reach the moon, regardless of all future scientific advances. Number 7, said by Darrell F. Zanuck, head of 20th Century Fox in 1946. Television won't be able to hold on to any market it captures after the first 6 months. People will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. Number 6, Decca Records rejecting the Beatles in a letter in 1962. Here's what they said. We don't like their sound. Groups of guitars are on the way out. Number 5, Dr. Ian G. MacDonald, Los Angeles surgeon, has quoted in Newsweek, November 18, 1969. Quote, for the majority of people, the use of tobacco has a beneficial effect. Number 4, a Western Union internal memo in 1876 said, this telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us. Number 3, Ptolemy, the great Egyptian astronomer in the 2nd century, said this, the earth is the center of the universe. Number 2, written by King George III of England on July 4th, 1776. Nothing of importance happened today. And number 1, most stupid quote ever said in the history of the intergalactic empire. Charles H. Duell, U.S. Commissioner of Patents in 1899. Everything that can be invented has been invented. Having read these, let me share with you another list of statements made by real teens just like you. You've heard them all before, and they're just as ridiculous as the ones I just read. No one in my family has ever gone to college. I'd be crazy to think I could make it. It's no use. My stepdad and I will never get along. We're just too different. Being smart is a white thing. My teacher's out to get me. She's so pretty, I'll bet she's a jerk. You can't get ahead in life unless you know the right people. Come on. Me, thin? Are you kidding? My whole family is full of fat people. It's impossible to get a good job around here because nobody wants to hire a teen. So, what's a paradigm? What do these statements I just read have in common? Well, first, they're all perceptions about the way things are. Second, they're all inaccurate or incomplete, even though the people who said them are convinced they're true. Another word for perceptions is paradigms. A paradigm is the way you see something. It's your point of view, your frame of reference or belief. As you may have noticed, our paradigms are often way off the mark, and as a result, they create limitations. For instance, you may be convinced that you don't have what it takes to get into college, but remember, Ptolemy was just as convinced that the earth was the center of the universe. And think about the teen who believes she can't get along with her stepdad. If that is her paradigm, is she likely to ever get along? Probably not, because that belief will hold her back. Paradigms are like a pair of glasses. When you have incomplete paradigms about yourself or life in general, it's like wearing glasses with the wrong prescription. That lens affects how you see everything else. As a result, what you see is what you get. If you believe you're dumb, that very belief will make you dumb. If you believe your sister is dumb, you'll look for evidence to support your belief, find it, and she'll remain dumb in your eyes. On the other hand, if you believe you're smart, that belief will cast a rosy hue on everything you do. A teen named Christy once shared with me how much she loved the beauty of the mountains. One day she went to visit her eye doctor and, to her surprise, discovered that her sight was much worse than she had thought. After putting in her new contacts, she was astonished at how well she could see. As she put it, "I realized that the mountains and the trees and even the signs on the side of the road have more detail than I had ever imagined. It was the strangest thing. I don't know how bad my eyes were until I experienced how good they could be." That's often the way it is. We don't know how much we're missing because we have messed up paradigms. We have paradigms about ourselves, about other people, and about life in general. Let's take a look at each. Paradigms of self. Stop right now and consider this question. Are your paradigms of yourself helping or hindering you? When my wife Rebecca was a junior at Madison High School in Idaho, a sign-up sheet for the Miss Madison pageant was passed around in class. Rebecca, along with many other girls, signed up. Linda, who sat next to Rebecca, passed without signing. "Sign up, Linda," insisted Rebecca. "Oh, no, I couldn't do that." "Come on, it'll be fun." "No, really, I'm not the type." "Sure you are. I think you'd do great," chimed Rebecca. Rebecca and others continued to encourage Linda until she finally signed. Rebecca didn't think anything of the situation at the time. However, 7 years later, she received a letter from Linda describing the inner struggle she had gone through that day and thanking Rebecca for being the spark that helped change her life. Linda related how she suffered from a poor self-image in high school and was just shocked that Rebecca would consider her a candidate for a talent pageant. She had finally agreed to sign up just to get Rebecca and the others off her back. Linda said she was so uncomfortable about being in the pageant that she contacted the pageant director the following day and demanded her name be removed from the list. But, like Rebecca, the director insisted that Linda participate. Reluctantly, Linda agreed. But that was all it took. By daring to participate in an event that demanded the best of her, Linda began to see herself in a new light. In her letter, Linda thanked Rebecca from deep within for, in essence, taking off her warped glasses, shattering them against the floor, and insisting she try on a new pair. Linda noted that although she hadn't won a single title or award, she had overcome an even bigger obstacle, her low perception of herself. Because of her example, her two younger sisters participated in the pageant in later years. It became a big thing in her family. The following year, Linda became a student body officer and, as Rebecca relates, developed a vivacious and outgoing personality. Linda experienced what is called a paradigm shift. It means that you suddenly see things in a new way, as if you just tried on a new pair of glasses. Just as negative self-paradigms can put limitations on us, positive self-paradigms can bring out the best in us, as the following story about the son of King Louis XVI of France illustrates.
King Louis had been taken from his throne and imprisoned. His young son, the prince, was taken by those who dethroned the king. They thought that inasmuch as the king's son was heir to the throne, if they could destroy him morally, he would never realize the great and grand destiny that life had bestowed upon him. They took him to a community far away, and there they exposed the lad to every filthy and vile thing that life could offer. They exposed him to foods, the richness of which would quickly make him a slave to appetite. They used vile language around him constantly. They exposed him to lewd and lusting women. They exposed him to dishonor and distrust. He was surrounded 24 hours a day by everything that could drag the soul of a man as low as one could slip. For over 6 months he had this treatment, but not once did the young lad buckle under pressure. Finally, after intensive temptation, they questioned him. Why had he not submitted himself to these things? Why had he not partaken? These things would provide pleasure, satisfy his lusts, and were desirable. They were all his. The boy said, "I cannot do what you ask, for I was born to be a king."
Prince Louis held that paradigm of himself so tightly that nothing could shake him. In like manner, if you walk through life wearing glasses that say, "I can do it," or "I matter," that belief will put a positive spin on everything else. At this point, you may be wondering, well, if my paradigm of myself is all contorted, then what can I do to fix it? Well, one way is to spend time with somebody who believes in you and builds you up. My mother was such a person to me. When I was growing up, my mom always believed in me, especially when I doubted myself. She was always saying stuff like, "Sean, of course you should run for class president," and Of course, Sean. Ask her out. I'm sure she would just die to go out with you. It seemed that whenever I needed to be affirmed, I'd talk to my mom and she'd clean my glasses. Ask any successful person and most will tell you that they had a person who believed in them, a teacher, a friend, a parent, a guardian, a sister, a grandmother. It only takes one person and it doesn't really matter who it is. Don't be afraid to lean on this person and to get nourished by them. Go to them for advice. Try to see yourself the way they see you. Oh, what a difference a new pair of glasses can make. As someone once said, if you could envision the type of person that God intended you to be, you would rise up and never be the same again. At times, you may not have anyone to lean on and may need to go solo. If this is the case with you, pay special attention to the next chapter, which will give you some handy tools to help you build your self-image. Paradigms of others. We have paradigms not only about ourselves, but also about other people, and they can be way out of whack too. Seeing things from a different point of view can help us understand why other people act the way they do. Becky told me about her paradigm shift.
As a junior in high school, I had a friend named Kim. She was essentially a nice person, but as the year progressed, it became more and more difficult to get along with her. She was easily offended and often felt left out. She was moody and difficult to be around. It got to the point where my friends and I started calling her less and less. Eventually, we stopped inviting her to things. I was gone for a good part of the summer after that year, and when I returned, I was talking to a good friend of mine, catching up on all the news. She was telling me about all the gossip, the different romances, who was dating who, and so on, when suddenly she said, "Oh, did I tell you about Kim? She's been having a hard time lately because her parents are going through a really messy divorce. She's taking it really hard." When I heard this, my whole perspective changed. Rather than being annoyed by Kim's behavior, I felt terrible about my own. I felt I had deserted her in her time of need. Just by knowing that one little bit of information, my whole attitude toward her changed. It was really an eye-opening experience.
And to think that all it took to change Becky's paradigm was a smidgen of new information. We too often judge people without having all the facts, don't we? Monica had a similar experience.
I used to live in California, where I had a lot of good friends. I didn't care about anyone new because I already had my friends, and I thought that new people should deal with it in their own way. Then when I moved in, I was the new kid and wished that someone would care about me and make me part of their group of friends. I see things in a very different way now. I know what it feels like not to have any friends.
From now on, Monica will treat new kids on the block very differently, don't you think? Seeing things from another point of view can make such a difference in our attitude toward others. The following anecdote from Reader's Digest, contributed by Dan P. Grayling, is a classic example of a paradigm shift.
A friend of mine returning to South Africa from a long stay in Europe found herself with some time to spare at London's Heathrow Airport. Buying a cup of coffee and a small package of cookies, she staggered, laden with luggage, to an unoccupied table. She was reading the morning paper when she became aware of someone rustling at her table. From behind her paper, she was flabbergasted to see a neatly dressed young man helping himself to her cookies. She did not want to make a scene, so she leaned across and took a cookie herself. A minute or so passed, more rustling. He was helping himself to another cookie. By the time they were down to the last cookie in the package, she was very angry, but still could not bring herself to say anything. Then the young man broke the cookie in two, pushed half across to her, ate the other half, and left. Sometime later, when the public address system called for her to present her ticket, she was still fuming. Imagine her embarrassment when she opened her handbag and was confronted by her package of cookies. She had been eating his.
Consider this lady's feelings toward the neatly dressed young man before the turn of events. What a rude, presumptive young man. Imagine her feelings afterwards. How embarrassing. How kind of him to share his last cookie with me. So, what's the point? It's simply this. Our paradigms are often incomplete, inaccurate, or completely messed up. Therefore, we shouldn't be so quick to judge, label, or form rigid opinions of other people, or ourselves for that matter. From our limited points of view, we seldom see the whole picture or have all the facts. In addition, we should open our minds and hearts to new information, new ideas and points of view, and be willing to change our paradigms when it comes clear that they're wrong. Most important, it is obvious that if we want to make big changes in our lives, the key is to change our paradigms, or the glasses through which we see the world. Change the lens and everything else follows. If you look closely, you'll find that most of your problems with relationships or self-image or attitude are the result of a messed up paradigm or two. For instance, if you have a poor relationship with, say, your dad, it's likely that both of you have a warped paradigm of each other. You may see him as being totally out of touch with the modern world, and he may see you as a spoiled, ungrateful brat. In reality, both of your paradigms are probably incomplete and are holding you back from real communication. As you'll see, this book will challenge many of your paradigms and hopefully will help you create more accurate and complete ones. So, get ready. Paradigms of life. Besides having paradigms about ourselves and others, we also have paradigms about the world in general. You can usually tell what your paradigm is by asking yourself, what is the driving force of my life? What do I spend my time thinking about? Or, who or what is my obsession? Whatever is most important to you will become your paradigm, your glasses, or as I like to call it, your life center. Some of the more popular life centers for teens include things like friends, stuff, boyfriend or a girlfriend, school, parents, sports, hobbies, heroes, enemies, self, and work. They each have their good points, but they are all incomplete in one way or another. And as I'm about to show you, they'll mess you up if you center your life on them. Luckily, there is one center that you can always count on. We'll save it for last. Friend-centered. There's nothing better than belonging to a great group of friends and nothing worse than feeling like an outcast. Friends are important but should never become your center. Why? Well, occasionally they're fickle. Now and then they're fake. Sometimes they'll talk behind your back or develop new friendships and forget yours. They have mood swings. They move. In addition, if you base your identity on having friends, being accepted, and being popular, you may find yourself compromising your standards or changing them every weekend to accommodate your friends. Believe it or not, the day will come when friends will not be the biggest thing in your life. During high school, I had a fabulous group of friends. We did everything together. We swam in illegal canals. We gorged at all-you-can-eat buffets. We water skied in the night, in the dark. We dated each other's girlfriends. You name it. I love these guys. I felt that we'd be friends forever. After graduating from high school and moving away, however, I've been amazed at how seldom we see each other. I still love these guys, but we live far apart, and new relationships and jobs and family, they take up our time. As a teen, I never could have fathomed this. Make as many friends as you can, but don't build your life on them. It's an unstable foundation. Stuff-centered. Sometimes we see the world through the lens of possessions, or what I call stuff. We live in a material world, and that teaches us that he who dies with the most toys wins. We have to have the fastest car, the nicest clothes, the latest stereo, the best hairstyle, and the many other things that are supposed to bring us happiness. Possessions also come in the form of titles and accomplishments, such as head cheerleader or lead in the play, valedictorian, student body officer, chief editor, or MVP. There is nothing wrong with accomplishing and enjoying our stuff, but we should never center our lives on things, which in the end have no lasting value. Our confidence needs to come from within, not from without. From the quality of our hearts, not the quantity of things we own. After all, he who dies with the most toys still dies. I once knew a girl who had the most beautiful and expensive wardrobe I'd ever seen. She seldom wore the same outfit twice. After getting to know her better, I began to notice that she got much of her self-confidence from her clothes and had a bad case of elevator eyes. It seemed that whenever she talked with another girl, she'd eye her from head to foot to see if her outfit was as nice as her own, which usually gave her a superiority complex. She was stuff-centered, which was a real turn-off to me. I read a saying once that says it better than I can. If who I am is what I have, and what I have is lost, then who am I? Boyfriend, girlfriend-centered. This may be the easiest trap of all to fall into. I mean, who hasn't been centered on a boyfriend or a girlfriend at one point? Let's pretend that Brady centered his life on his girlfriend, Tasha. Now, watch the instability it creates in Brady. Here's Tasha's action. She makes a rude comment. Here's how Brady reacts. Oh, my day is ruined. Here's Tasha again. She flirts with Brady's best friend, and Brady's reactions? I've been betrayed. I hate my friend. Here's Tasha again. I think we should date other people. Here's Brady's reaction. My life is over. You don't love me anymore. The ironic thing is that the more you center your life on someone, the more unattractive you become to that person. How's that? Well, first of all, if you're centered on someone, you're no longer hard to get. Second, it's irritating when someone builds their entire emotional life around you. Since their security comes from you and not from within themselves, they always need to have those sickening, where do we stand talks. When I began dating my wife, one of the things that attracted me most was that she didn't center her life on me. I'll never forget the time she turned me down with a smile and no apology for a very important date. I loved it. She was her own person and had her own inner strength. Her moods were independent of mine. You can usually tell when a couple becomes centered on each other because they are forever breaking up and then getting back together again. Although the relationship has deteriorated, their emotional lives and identities are so intertwined that they can never fully let go of each other. Believe me, you'll be a much better boyfriend or girlfriend if you're not centered on your partner. Independence is more attractive than dependence. Besides, centering your life on another person doesn't show that you love them, only that you're dependent on them. Have as many girlfriends or boyfriends as you'd like, just don't get obsessed with or centered on them. Because although there are exceptions, these relationships are usually about as stable as a yo-yo. School-centered. Among teens, centering one's life on school is more common than you might think. Lisa from Canada regrets being school-centered for such a long time.
I've been so ambitious and so school-centered that I haven't enjoyed my youth. It has not only been unhealthy for myself, but it's been selfish because all I cared about was me and my achievements. As a 7th grader, I was already working as hard as a college student. I wanted to be a brain surgeon, just because it was the hardest thing I could think of. I would get up at 6 every morning all through school and not go to bed before 2 a.m. in order to achieve. I felt teachers and peers expected it of me. They would always be surprised if I didn't get perfect grades. My parents tried to loosen me up, but my own expectations were as great as that of teachers and peers. I realize now that I could have accomplished what I wanted without trying so hard, and I could have had a good time doing it.
Now, our education obviously is vital to our futures and should be a top priority, but we must be careful not to let dean's lists and GPAs and AP classes take over our lives. School-centered teens often become so obsessed with getting good grades that they often forget that the real purpose of school is to learn. As thousands of teens have proved, you can do extremely well in school and still maintain a healthy balance in your life. Thank goodness our worth isn't measured by our GPA. Parent-centered. Your parents can be your greatest source of love and guidance, and you should respect and honor them. But centering your life on your parents and living to please them above everything else can become a real nightmare. Don't tell your parents I said that or they might take away your book. Just kidding. Read what happened to this young girl from Louisiana.
I worked so hard all semester, I just knew that my parents would be pleased, 6 A's and 1 B+. But all I could see in their eyes was disappointment. All they wanted to know was why the B+ wasn't an A. It was all I could do not to cry. What did they want from me? That was my sophomore year of high school, and I spent the next 2 years trying to make my parents proud of me. I played basketball, and I hoped that they would be proud. They never came to see me play. I made the honor roll every semester, but after a while, straight A's were just expected. I was going to go to college to be a teacher, but there was no money in that, and my parents felt that I would be better off studying something else, so I did. Every decision I made was prefaced with the questions. What would Mom and Dad want me to do? Would they be proud? Would they love me? But no matter what I did, it was never good enough. I had based my whole life on the goals and aspirations my parents thought were good, and it didn't make me happy. I lived to please my parents for so long that I felt out of control. I felt worthless, useless, and unimportant. Eventually, I realized that my parents' approval wasn't coming, and if I didn't get my act together, I would destroy myself. I needed to find a center that was timeless, unchanging, and real. A center that couldn't shout, disapprove, or criticize. So I started to live my own life by the principles that I thought would bring me happiness, like honesty with myself and parents, faith in a happier life, hope for the future, and belief in my own goodness. In the beginning, I sort of had to pretend that I was strong, but over a period of time, I became strong. Finally, I shook out on my own and had a falling out with my folks, but it made them see who I was. And they loved me. They apologized for all the pressure they put on me and expressed their love. I was 18 years old before I ever remember my dad saying, "I love you." But they were still the sweetest words I have ever heard, and well worth the wait. I still care about what my parents think, and I am still influenced by their opinions, but ultimately, I have become responsible for my life and my actions. I try to please myself before anybody else.
Other possible centers. The list of possible centers could go on and on. Sports or hobby-centered people? That's a big one. How many times have we seen a sports-centered jock build his identity around being a great athlete, only to suffer a career-ending injury? It happens all the time. And the poor guy is left to rebuild his life from scratch. The same goes for hobbies and interests such as dance, debate, drama, music, or clubs. And what about being hero-centered? If you build your life around a movie or a rock star, a famous athlete, or a powerful politician, what happens if they die, if they do something really stupid, or end up in jail? Where are you then? Sometimes we can even become enemy-centered and build our entire emotional life around hating somebody, hating a group, hating a person, hating an idea, like Captain Hook, whose entire existence revolved around hating Peter Pan. This is often the case with gangs and with bitter divorces. What a warped center this one is. Becoming work-centered is a sickness that usually afflicts older people, but can also reach teens. Workaholism is usually driven by a compulsive need to have more stuff, like money, cars, status, or recognition, which feeds us for a season, but never fully satisfies. Another common center is being self-centered, or thinking the world revolves around you and your problems. This often results in being so worried about your own condition that you're oblivious to the walking wounded all around you. As you can see, all these and many more life centers do not provide the stability that you and I need in life. I'm not saying we shouldn't strive to become excellent in something like dance or debate, or strive to develop outstanding relationships with our friends and parents. We should. But there's a fine line between having a passion for something and basing your entire existence on it, and that's the line we shouldn't cross. Principle-centered, the real thing. In case you were starting to wonder, there is a center that actually works. What is it? Let's hear the drum roll. It's being principle-centered. We are all familiar with the effects of gravity. Throw a ball up and it comes down. It's a natural law or principle. Just as there are principles that rule the physical world, there are principles that rule the human world. Principles that are not religious, they aren't American or Chinese, they aren't mine, they're not yours. They aren't up for discussion. They apply equally to everyone, rich or poor, king or peasant, male or female. They can't be bought. They can't be sold. If you live by them, you will excel. If you break them, you will fail. Hey, that sort of rhymes. It's that simple. Here are a few examples of principles. Honesty is a principle. Service is a principle. Love is a principle. Hard work is a principle. Respect, gratitude, moderation, fairness, integrity, loyalty, responsibility, all of these are principles. There are dozens and dozens more. They are not hard to identify. Just as a compass always points to true north, your heart will always recognize true principles. For example, think about the principle of hard work. If you haven't paid the price, you may be able to get by for a while, but eventually it'll catch up to you. I remember one time being invited to play in a golf tournament with my college football coach. He was a great golfer. Everyone, including my coach, expected that I'd be a fine golfer as well. After all, I was a college athlete, and all college athletes should be great golfers, right? Wrong. You see, I stunk at golf. I'd only played a few times in my life, and I didn't even know how to hold a club properly. I was kind of nervous about everyone finding out how bad I was at golf, especially my coach. So I was kind of hoping that I could fool him and everyone else into thinking I was pretty good. On the very first hole, there was a small crowd gathered around. I was first up to tee off. Why me? As I stepped up to hit the ball, I prayed for a miracle. I swung. Swoosh! It worked. A miracle. I couldn't believe it. I had hit a long shot straight down the middle of the fairway. Whoo! I turned around and smiled to the crowd and acted as if I had always hit like that. Thank you very much. I had them all fooled. But I was only fooling myself because, you see, there were 17 and a half more holes to go. In fact, it took only about 5 more shots for everyone around me, including my coach, to realize that I was a complete golf nerd. It wasn't long until the coach was trying to show me how to swing the club. I'd been exposed. Ouch! Now, you can't fake playing golf, tuning a guitar, or speaking Arabic if you haven't paid the price to get good. There's no shortcut. Hard work is a principle. As the NBA great Larry Bird once put it, if you don't do your homework, you won't make your free throws. Principles never fail. It takes faith to live by principles, especially when you see other people close to you get ahead in life by lying and cheating and indulging and manipulating and serving only themselves. What you don't see, however, is that breaking principles always catches up to them in the end. Take the principle of honesty. If you're a big liar, you may be able to get by for a while, even for a few years. But you'd be hard-pressed to find a liar who achieves success over the long haul. As Cecil B. DeMille observed about his classic movie, The 10 Commandments, it is impossible for us to break the law. We can only break ourselves against the law. Unlike all the other sinners we've looked at, principles will never fail you. They won't talk behind your back. They don't get up and move. They don't suffer career-ending injuries. They don't play favorites based on skin color, gender, wealth, or body features. A principle-centered life is simply the most stable, immovable, and shakable foundation you can build upon, and we all need one of those. To grasp why principles always work, just imagine living a life based on their opposites. A life of dishonesty, loafing, indulgence, ingratitude, and selfishness, and hate. I can't imagine any good thing coming out of that, can you? Ironically, putting principles first is the key to doing better in all of the other centers. For example, if you live the principle of service, respect, and love, you're likely to pick up more friends and be a more stable boyfriend or girlfriend. Putting principles first is also the key to becoming a person of character. Decide today to make principles your life center or paradigm. In whatever situation you find yourself, ask, what is the principle in play here? For every problem, search for the principle that will solve it. If you're feeling worn out and beaten up by life, perhaps you should try the principle of balance. If you find no one trusts you, the principle of honesty might just be the cure you need. In the following story by Walter McPeak, loyalty was the principle in play.
One of two brothers fighting in the same company in France fell by a German bullet. The one who escaped asked permission of his officer to go and bring his brother in. "He is probably dead," said the officer, "and there's no use in you risking your life to bring in his body." But after further pleading, the officer consented. Just as the soldier reached the lines with his brother on his shoulders, the wounded man died. "There you see," said the officer, "you risked your life for nothing." "No," replied Tom, "I did what he expected of me, and I have my reward." When I crept up to him and took him in my arms, he said, "Tom, I knew you would come. I just felt you would come."
In the upcoming chapters, you'll discover that each of the 7 habits is based upon a basic principle or two, and that's where they get their power from. The long and short of it is principles rule. Coming attractions. Up next, we'll talk about how to get rich in a way you probably never thought of. So, carry on.